In this episode, we'll meet my newest Dressage Naturally instructor, Niki Wilde Broadhead from Utah. She has a background in foundational horsemanship and a passion for cowboy dressage and teaching. So here we go, episode 235, Niki Wilde Broadhead. Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So, let's get started. Niki has a strong background in foundational horsemanship, foal handling, and problem horses. She's a cowboy dressage endorsed clinician and a cowboy dressage level 3 judge with distinction. And she has spent many years advancing adults and children in her programs. She is such a dedicated and enthusiastic horsewoman who I've known for a long, long time. She's also an enthusiastic and dedicated student and instructor, and I'm really happy to introduce her to you. So here we go. All right, Niki, thank you for joining me on the pod.
Thanks, Karen, for having me.
Yeah, so I wanted to have you on here to introduce you to everybody as our newest Dressage Naturally instructor. And I thought we just kind of start with a little bit of your background. Yeah. What, how did you start with horses and
Well, when I was growing up, my dad had race horses, and they were just kind of his thing. I played sports and danced and did other things. Um, but we did grow up. I did grow up like every weekend at the racetrack, and it. So we were around horses a lot. We always had to go home to do chores, and there was a lot of there were babies born and all the fun things that come with horses, but they weren't necessarily my thing. And then my dad had passed away, and a little later, after I had my kids, I was 25, and I got my first horse because I actually didn't want to buy a tractor. We had a house with 4 acres, and my husband was like, "Oh, we need a tractor so that we can mow down this pasture." And I said, "Oh, hey, wait, my mom has a whole bunch of horses, race horses from that were my dad's, and we could probably get one of those, and then we could put it out there because, it would eat down the pasture and win-win." So I went to my mom's house and got a horse and brought it home and put it in the pasture. And my husband said, "Well, you can't just sit it there and not do anything with it," because he was raised on a farm, on a ranch. And I'm like, "Well, doesn't it just sit there and eat anyway?" But so I I asked around and then took my horse to the local colt starter person, because she had been raced on the track, but she hadn't been, I don't know, they called it, like, she was just green broke or track broke. And I didn't have any idea what to do with her. And so I took her to the local guy. And luckily, as luck would have it, I guess, is that he did a form of like round pen training. And this was in 1997. And he had her for 30 days. And then I went and watched every day and was trying to figure out, what he was doing or what I needed to do. And I asked him at the end of the time that he had her, it was like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do with her now? And he's like, we'll take her home and ride her. I'm like, well, I don't know how to ride her. And he said, well, there's some good books and stuff out. And he listed off a bunch of people like John Lyons, Paparelli, Monty Roberts, who, all of the people at that time who had just kind of started out. And so I went to my local library and some of the books were checked out, but Pat Pirelli's was there. And so I checked it out and I started reading it. And then from there, I started writing notes on recipe cards and putting them in my back pocket and going out to my round pen with my baby monitor on my belt while my kids were taking nap. And I was trying to make my way through. At the back of the book, the old books, it has like an old level 1 type test. And so I was just trying to work my way through all of those things that were listed in there. And I was really struggling with getting her to go sideways on the fence. And so I was so frustrated one day that I marched in the house and I opened up the book, and the publisher was Western Horseman, I think. And so I looked in there, I called the 1-800-555-1212 and got the number for Western Horseman Publishing, called them and said, hey, I need the number for this Pirelli guy because I can't get my horse to go sideways down the fence. And they said, well, we don't have his private number, but he has an office that just opened in Pagosa Springs. And so that was how I got started, was I then signed up for Pat's class and started working with Amy Brimhall, who was in Montana at the time, and she was the closest Pirelli instructor. And then I saw Pat in like 1998 and went on and did the levels.
Yeah. It's such a great story because it really illustrates how I first met you, and what I learned about you is like if you want to learn something, there's no stopping you. And so I remember we met at some point and then I was teaching you, and what did you say? You asked me if there was like, can I ever ask you questions or something like that. Do you
Yes.
remember what
Yes,
that was?
it was right after you had left the Pirelli Ranch, and it was your first clinic. And you said, because all of you guys are here, if you have any questions, you can send me an email and ask. And I have teased you still to this day because I am sure you had no idea who you were actually saying that to. And there has been 20 years of emailed questions about every little nuance of whatever it is that I was stuck on at the time.
Yeah, and the rest is history. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that you weren't like a horse crazy girl. It's like, well, we have this horse, and then my husband says, I've gotta, I got it to mow the grass, and my husband says, well, I better do something with it. And sort of one thing led to another. It's so interesting how life works like that sometimes. But yeah, that sort of voraciousness as a student, I think also shows up in your ability to teach because, you have very consciously learned this stuff. And yeah, and I see the same enthusiasm in your teaching and watching you. We'll get talk a little bit more later about your program and the kids, and you know, it's just really fun to watch you pass on that enthusiasm to your students. And we were just saying that was like 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. 20 years ago.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And yeah, so since then, now you're a cowboy dressage enthusiast doing a lot of that. Maybe can you share a little bit about that and how you got into that?
Sure, that was actually part of what led me to you was in early 2000, like two or three, I had a clinic. Actually, I hosted a clinic with Jack Brainerd, and he was known as the Flying Lead Change King. And he told me that at lunch, he told me that dressage was my thing. And he says, "You and your little horse, you." And he had learned at a dressage barn early on, which is part of the reason that he was so good at lead changes. And so when you ended up at the Pirelli in the Pirelli system or a friend of Pirelli's, then I knew that nobody else would understand the background that I had learned or the vocabulary because I didn't know really anything else. Um, well, like the old way that my dad had with horses as I was growing up, but there was nobody who would understand if I were using natural horsemanship type terminology. And so Jack Brainerd said that that's what I am supposed to do. And he had a whole wealth of knowledge. And so I absolutely believed him. And so then when your first clinic, I'm like, well, sign me up because apparently that's where I'm supposed to live. So at the time, during the Flying Lead Change Clinic, Jack Brainerd had said that you're the reason that we need to make cowboy dressage. And he said, because your little stock horse, your little quarter horse, moves perfectly for the way that she's built and for her breed, but she would never be able to compete with warm bloods in a traditional dressage setting. So then I kept working with you and I waited, and then cowboy dressage became a sport. And I only had to wait about a decade. And by then, it felt like I was ready, and I went and did a cowboy dressage show. And I had traveled about 12 hours to get there. And I went in for my very first test, and I was so excited, and I had been preparing for months. And my horse, Max, went right down the center line. I'm like, oh, yay, he's actually going straight. This is great. And he stopped and then he poked his hip out. And I thought, well, okay, that's not great, but we'll just keep going. So throughout the test, he stopped at E to poop. And then he he called out in the middle of his 20-meter circle. And I just started to laugh because there was really nothing more I could do. And at the end of the day, I had the lowest score of the entire show of the day. So I absolutely understand what that feels like. And then three tests later, Max had kind of warmed up. He, was a little more familiar with the environment, and he was on, and he ended up with the overall high point of the show. And so I know what it's like to be at the very end, and I know what it's like to be first. And it's pretty emotional on both ends, but it always keeping the horse first has been my biggest priority.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I love that you said in that first test, where things weren't going well, you said, I just laughed because what else is there to do? And in reality, there's a lot of other ways that somebody might have reacted. And so I just really appreciate that, where you're coming from, because the truth is what can you do? You have to laugh. It's but a lot of horses don't get that courtesy, especially in front of people where it's hard for humans to keep their emotional fitness. So that's such a beautiful story, and I'm sure that experience has helped you help other people when they're going to any kind of competition.
Well, I try to keep that in mind when I tell in the morning of any show that I'm judging, because I'm a cowboy dressage level 3 judge with distinction. And when we do our judges meeting in the morning, I make sure that everybody knows that I have been there. No matter where they're at, I have been there. And I wouldn't want them to feel any other way. And that's one of the reasons that I like cowboy dressage as a sport, because they put a priority on partnership and they have tests on the ground at Liberty, etc. And your soft feel score is one of your collectives, and it is times 3, where the other collectives are all times 2. So, um, as a judge, you are rewarded for your partnership first and foremost. And so it was a natural sport for me because the principles align very much with what I had learned all along with you. And so it makes a very easy choice when with all of the sports in all of the world, and if you align your principles that way, then the choices are already made for you.
That's so cool. Yeah, and I love that that's a priority in what judges are looking for, but I also love that they've worked the numbers to make it more weighted that way. And yeah, it's a problem in quote unquote normal dressage, when you think about the gait scores and the extravagance of the gaits and then it sort of becomes at what cost. So I love that they put some thought into building that right into the system. So very cool. Yeah. And so I'll let you gush about dressage naturally for a little bit because because I'm
Okay.
always interested because I don't see dressage naturally as a separate discipline, and probably if I had to do it all over again, I would name it something that didn't even have the word dressage in it or natural because it's something that I think can help anybody of any discipline. So I'm just curious, what's the piece that you get from dressage naturally that you help your students with? Because you teach different disciplines and you teach kids that are doing all kinds of crazy stuff and so I love hearing about how what I teach dovetails into other things. So yeah.
So, like I said, the over overreaching principle of everything is that you put your horse first. And there have been times, admittedly, where I didn't do that. And I had to go back and, like you say, I had to put some money, some time, some effort back into my horse's emotional bank account because I was in the red. And there was a particular day that I went out to my horse and I apologized to her with tears streaming down my face because I had sacrificed her for something that I wanted. And I promised her I would never ever do that again. So if it doesn't have that principle, then I won't do it. So that overreaching principle is what drives me to teach the way that I do and um, to structure my lessons, especially with the kids, that way, because I don't want the kids to ever feel that kind of guilt, and I never want their horses to ever feel like they have been put in that position. Your new class, the Happy Athlete training scale, is one of my absolute favorites because it puts into perspective exactly what we're talking about, that the relationship comes first and that you can do anything you want. And it doesn't really matter what sport it is, but you can do anything from, what some people would consider nothing, where you're just undemanding time. All of those things help build a relationship. And a relationship is not about what one person wants and the other doesn't get. And so I love putting that in that kind of a perspective where if we are friends, which I hope me and my horse always are, then what he wants is every bit as important as what I want. And if we share that, then we can do it together. But if it's something that is driven by one, then there will be resentment because the emotional bank account will run into the red. So with everything I try to do, I try to make it so that the horse comes first and that it's fun. Fun for the person, fun for the kids, fun for the horse. Because if it is, then it makes everything so much easier. A lot of times, especially when I'm teaching kids, they will not realize how much they've learned and for the course of months because it seems like we're just goofing around all the time. But at the end of all of those months, then, they maybe they enter a show like one of my students, Charlie Henderson, she entered a cowboy dressage virtual show for fun and ended up the Cowboy Dressage World Junior Walk Jog and Walk Jog Lope World Champion that year
Wow.
and got a 9.5 on her center line. And we still use her video of her center line in judges boot camp because it was so incredible. But they just don't have any idea how good they are or how good they've gotten. And their horses don't either because they got there without any of the pressure or stress of trying to get to a particular thing. Instead, it was just two friends doing a pattern. And it's super fun to watch. And it just, I mean, it honors everything that you have taught me that I am able to help them with.
So cool. And I've had the pleasure of being at your place and watching you with your kids, and I saw such amazing stuff. I saw one of your kids riding bareback bit. I don't even remember if she had a
Mm-hmm.
bitless or bridleless,
No,
bitless
Billis.
bareback backwards doing lateral work.
Yes. Yes. She was doing all the
They were
lateral
playing
work on the
around, kicking
wall.
a ball around, and then she like starts doing lateral work. I'm like, okay. And everybody was having fun, and we were talking earlier about the happy athlete um, training scale. And yeah, it's such a simple concept, but in the simplicity is its power. And what you were just talking about, like the power of having a human happy athlete. They don't even realize they're like going to school or having this educational process. They're just having fun and it's going in. They don't even know until months later they're like, "Whoa, I can do stuff." And you were telling me a story about a horse you were working with in California where you had a unique way of helping this dressage horse become a little happier and then the results. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. This horse, he was a Warlander and he was purchased as an upper level dressage horse, which he's lovely. He moves lovely and he has the cutest personality. But he didn't really think that dressage was all that exciting. And when they tacked him up at the cross ties, he was fine going into the cross ties. And then the minute that he was tacked up and he was led away from the cross ties, he would crawl. like one step at a time before he had to go into the dressage ring. So we played some games where I had pockets full of cookies and carrots and apples and all kinds of stuff. And I would stand at a letter, and then he could just beeline it to me as fast as he wanted. And then he would get a handful of treats. And then I would go to a different letter, and then I would go to a different letter. And I did that for a few days, for a few sessions. And then the like the chase part of him started to wake up, and he started thinking that was pretty fun. And so, she would have to kind of hold him back, and then he would just run for me as fast as he could go. And the enthusiasm was really great. And what happened was by the last session, she could come into the center line, and if I was standing at C, she could come down the center line and halt at X, and then I could run out and give him a treat. And then I could go back like I was the judge, and he could come around, turn right, do a 20-meter circle, stop at B, give him a treat. And so at the end of these 4 or 5 sessions, all of the sudden dressage wasn't so horrible. And to keep that enthusiasm up, the night before her, like she has dressage lessons on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The night before that, she has her daughter-in-law come and play the chase game. And now he has plenty of energy for his dressage lesson the next morning. And they can work on laterals and all kinds of things that she never got to work on before because he never had enough gas pedal to even be able to move well. So by getting his motivation up, then his balance, alignment, all of those things, because he was already plenty relaxed, that wasn't really the problem. Then he was able to actually want to do some of the things that she originally bought him for. And so that was super, super fun to watch and to participate in.
That's so fun. Yeah. I mean, there's the energy there, but if they don't want to do it, I think anybody who's ever ridden a horse who's like, nope, not going to play, then we realize how, helpless we really are. Like if a horse doesn't want to do something, they're they're not going to do it. And
Yeah.
so I love the creativity and just that idea of like, what if he was just a little happier in general about the idea of being in this space and proving to him again and again that there's good reasons to be happy. And then they change their mind about it. And then, yeah, and maybe you only get one lesson and then if you do two, it'll fade, but that's okay. I
Yes.
mean, that I've seen horses when you start playing with them this way and you not only prove it to them, but every day you regain that trust of like, I promise, that percentage wise, it's mostly a good experience. They really can change their attitudes completely. And Ovation, my horse Ovation, is a really good story of that because I used to have to put feed tubs around the property because otherwise he'd like, oh, why am I going anywhere? And it took that idea of like, let me plant them out there with food around the property until he started going, oh, there might be a reason to go somewhere. And then the movement felt good, and then the movement felt good, and then over, a year or so, he was like, moving's fun. And moving has stayed fun. And actually, he's 22 now, and he comes out, he feels like a 7-year-old. I mean, he would go and keep going. The switch flicked in his brain, and he's like, I feel good. Moving's fine, So it's just really wonderful to see that kind of creativity and prioritizing, yeah, the motivation, the them choosing to cooperate because we proved to them it's going to be a good deal for them. That's so fun.
It is fun. It is fun. That's when it really feels like a team.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's that the exercises within what we do is, those are powerful, but it again, it's that big picture principle and prioritization that I think is so, so powerful. So What would you say is your specialty as a teacher? Like, what's the thing? Well, there might be two things. There might be, what do you really enjoy? And then what's the thing that you're extra good at? And those might be the same thing, but they might not. I don't know. What pops into your mind?
Um, my favorite thing to teach is to make dressage simple. And I don't mean easy, but simple to understand because I didn't have a background in dressage and I didn't have, even working my way through the Pirelli program, I didn't understand the vocabulary. I didn't want to wear the clothes. I mean, really, I I live in Utah in the middle of cowboy land. So English writing here is growing, but it's still very, very small percentage of writers. And so I had no idea what any of that was. And it can be super overwhelming when, people are talking about your laterals and, which seat bone you need to be on. And, a horse follows weight, but they move away from pressure and all of these things. And then, some of the laterals were in French. And then that makes it even more overwhelming because you're like, oh man, and now I have to learn another language. And so it can be super daunting to try to work through all of that. And so my favorite thing to teach is how to understand that and not get overwhelmed by it and how to make that part fun. And your Simon, the school master noodle, is and was one of my favorite ways to do that. And it makes it so easy to understand that dressage is physical therapy so that your horse can last a really long time. Because if you are ever in a battle and your horse can't move as well on the left lead as the right lead, it doesn't take very long before your opponent knows that, and then you're dead. So, and it takes forever. I mean, it takes a long time to train a horse to be able to be very proficient, let's say to take to battle. And then, you're back to the drawing board and you have another 20 years to put into a horse before it would be in that same place. And so the making that big picture of what dressage is and does is my favorite thing to break down so that people don't get so overwhelmed by that because it was super overwhelming for me. And I want to help people, kids, all of it, everybody, all the horses, all everywhere, understand that not to that they don't have to be frustrated, that there are people who started at the bottom who really have had no idea going into it. And it's one of those things that I think most horse people forget is that experts at anything were once beginners. And it's easy to get caught into, especially in sports, in certain disciplines where you should know this or you should know that. And so a lot of times there's a lot of people who have told me that it's really hard for them to ask questions about things. They're just expected to know. And so they don't ask dumb questions because there really isn't anybody to answer them. And so that is my favorite thing. I don't want anybody to feel frustrated when they're learning because learning should be fun and dressage should be fun and all the sports should be fun. And trail riding is just a pattern because you're going to go to the sagebrush and then you're going to go around it and go over there and then tie your horse up there. It's all a pattern. And if you can figure out the pieces that make your pattern good, you can go do any sport you want to do.
That's so cool. When did I just, you can hear your enthusiasm for teaching. When did you start becoming a teacher? Because it sounds, because horses weren't like your life's dream in the beginning, and but then you got into it and you started learning. Like, at what point did you start wanting to teach, or how did that come about?
Ah, that was really funny. Amy asked me at one point, she was like, "Oh, so do you want to become an instructor?" And I was thinking, uh, no. No, I just really like horses. I don't really necessarily want to teach anybody anything. And I didn't feel like I knew enough of what I was doing to teach anybody. Um, and then as time went on and I started riding, there was a little neighbor girl who came over and would ride with me every day, and she would ask a bunch of questions. And there were other people, that we were riding with who started asking questions. And then um, at one point, I had one lady actually beg, please, 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 will you just come and teach me on Tuesdays? And I thought, well, okay, I guess we could see. I'm like, but I'm not really a teacher. I don't feel like I've had this lifetime of knowledge. I'm more like the Thomas Edison, I know 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb kind of teacher. So when I teach, a lot of times I'll say, oh, yes, and don't do that, or you can try that if you want to, but ask me how I know, because I swear I have tried a million things. And recently I told a student because she was saying, I can't believe I did this wrong. I can't believe I went too far this way or I went too far that way. And I pointed out to her that you don't know where the middle is. If you haven't swung the pendulum to both ends, you have no idea where your middle is. And so stop being so hard on yourself. And all of us can learn how to give ourselves and each other a little grace while we're learning. My grandma used to say that you would break your leg kicking your own butt. So don't do it.
A great saying. Yeah, I think that's how I started teaching too. I never meant it to be a thing, but people start asking. And something that I really get from you is, some people are really talented, but they're not conscious of how they're doing it, right? They're just like naturally talented, and they just, you ask them how you do it and they go, you just do it. You know. But I really get from your I think because you were such a diligent and still are student, that you understand the process of learning something and probably have spent enough time trying to do it on your own that you, like you said, you understand what it's like to go either end of that spectrum, right? In one show, you're the lowest score, the highest score. Like, this works, this doesn't work. And a lot of times people will go to riders who have some sort of success in competitions or something, but it doesn't mean, or even if they're not competitive, they just are masters with horses. It doesn't mean they always know how to explain it or they know what they're doing. And that's something I really appreciate in you, is that you're very, very conscious about what you know and what's going on in your body, and like what you just did, and you can describe what you did, and then you can describe, did it work, did it not work, what are the options we can try next. And that's it's something you've worked on and you've dedicated yourself to, but it's also a natural inclination, which is
Well, I am not naturally talented. I'm not. I really am not. Like when I say I grew up playing sports, I had to work a lot harder. a lot harder than a lot of the girls on my team. And when I danced on the drill team, I had to work a lot harder because it didn't really come natural to me. And I'm not fast and I can't jump high. So I had to figure out how to hit the ball harder so that I could make it to first base because I wasn't fast. I mean, you got to do what you can do. So
Hilarious.
growing up, I had to process things through my head first and then through my body and then make adjustments. And so I have been around so many people who are exactly what you're saying, that you ask them how they're doing it and they're like, well, I don't know, you just do. Well, that I'm not a butt to brain learner. I can't just fill it in my butt and then try to figure it out later. I have to know in my head, how come, why. I've been told by different instructors that I make their head hurt because I ask why. And I'm really I'm not trying to be obnoxious. It's just, I have to understand the reason for it, kind of like ovation, before I can understand how I'm supposed to put in the effort or what I'm supposed to do with my body because it doesn't make sense to me. And then I have to do it 100 times and then I can feel it. And that's the only reason that I break it down the way I do, is because it isn't natural to me and it hasn't been. So at this point, over thousands of horses, um, it now there's more feel than for sure when I started, but keeping journals and really writing things down so that I can process all of the stuff that's in my head or what I'm feeling has really helped me help others who are more brain to butt learners and not butt to brain learners.
Very cool. Do you have any um, favorite favorite one-liners or favorite quotes or favorite things that you tend to share a lot with people?
Yes. I have a whole bunch of them. So if you've ever been to my arena, I have graffiti on every wall. And that was something I didn't know how to do. So I had to study on YouTube how to spray paint graffiti art.
Yeah,
And you can learn.
she's got this great indoor arena and there's these white panels that are, like the walls around the arena and she literally does have different graffiti and if she sends a video at different times it might have different graffiti and do the kids help you with that too with putting up the
Um, no, well, I mean, I let them just paint the walls whatever they wanted. And so there are some of their designs, but a lot of the sayings are ones that just really resonated with me. My favorite that is on my tack room says, "Don't pull the head, push the body." And that is something that I'm always having to tell myself as well. If you feel it in your hands, don't fix it in your hands. It's like you described the reason that we have reins, right? To receive information about what's going on in the body and to slightly position the nose. And so if I can just keep that going, playing in the back of my head all the time, which is why I spray painted it on the wall. Don't pull the head, push the body. And then I have some barn rules. The first one is that comparison is the thief of joy. Wise leads to wise. And the next two were actually from you. You were the first person who told me that I can't ruin my horse. And that was a huge thing for me because everybody tells you, oh, well, don't do that, you'll ruin this, or don't try that, you'll ruin that. And you told, everybody in the class, but it really resonated with me that you can't ruin your horse and feel free to experiment. And so those are two of my barn rules that are also painted on the wall because you get if you start thinking that you can ruin your horse, then it's really hard to find any kind of middle because you can't let your pendulum swing. You have to sort of make the mistakes because good judgment comes from bad judgment. And until you have tried all of the things, you'll really have no idea what to do next. And so if you can't ruin your horse and you can feel free to experiment, then it really is unlimited. You're really contained by nothing at that point. You're like your superpowers of creativity are unleashed and you can just try whatever. And if it doesn't work, who cares? Try something else.
Well, I agree with all that. So fun, so fun. I mean, I was gonna say, my next question is like, if you had one message for the world, I feel like you've already given people a lot of one messages for the world.
Yeah, the queen of one-liners.
I know it's
Yes, that's a special skill. I can also have entire dialogues with movie quotes. So there's that. No, that's a language all on its
wait,
own.
wait, you have a whole log of movie quotes?
Yeah, no, like me and my husband can fight in movie quotes or just one-liners back and forth. It's
Really?
super
See, now
fun.
that is something I did not know about you. What are
Yeah.
some of your go-to movie quotes? I feel like I have movie quotes, but none of them are coming to mind right now under pressure.
I know, me neither. Now I'm totally blank. Um,
That's so funny.
one of so Lynn Ringrose Moe, who also has a background in dressage, is the cowboy dressage judge trainer and a founding partner. And she told me that my innate talent was that I am trilingual. I speak English, Western, and natural.
Ah,
So whatever yield you're going to do that you feel the most comfortable hearing it in, then that is, I try to help people feel the most comfortable with what they're doing by using whichever vocabulary they're the most used to hearing in their own lessons.
yeah, it's awesome. And that was something that I noticed, way back when I first started doing this, is that the language used by dressage people and by natural horsemanship people was so separate. And I think these days there's more exposure and a little more overlap. Um, but it's still really, really helpful to be able to use that other language and come from this, using this kind of language and say the same thing to get to the same place. Yeah, I really felt like in the beginning and still now, a lot of what I do is translation.
Mhm.
So very good skill. Well, Nikki, where can people contact you or find out more about you? I mean, anybody can find all my instructors from the Dressage Naturally website, but yeah, what's your favorite way for people to get in touch with you?
If you go to wildeoatshorsemanship.com, that's me. And you can reach out to me however you want. Facebook Messenger, or you can send me an email. You can do any of the things. And I'm on Instagram. I'm on all the social media stuff.
All the things, and I'll put links to all that in the show
Yeah, all the
notes.
socials. So
And
yes, you can find me however.
yeah, and you will travel for clinics.
I love to travel. My husband, a lot of times, will get to come with me, and we absolutely love it. This weekend, I will be teaching a sweet spot clinic in Naples, Idaho, which is up by the Spokane area. And so I am super excited. And then I have some other clinics that are coming up next year. And in the meantime, I teach at my house, and anybody can reach out to me and come see me but I love, love, love to travel.
Awesome. Oh, well, it was nice talking to you. And now I'll know what next time I email or anything with you, I'll try to slip in some movie quotes.
Yes.
Anything, mine are usually anything between like Casablanca or Monty Python. Those are the ones that usually stand out the most.
Oh, definitely. Like the Princess
Oh,
Bride,
Princess
right?
Bride, that's true. That's
I know that you know that I know that you.
there's
Yeah.
one thing you do not
It's
know. I am not left-handed.
yes. Exactly.
Exactly. All right. Well, Nikki, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. I've had several people requesting. They're like, "Hey, you have a new instructor and you haven't had her on the pod yet."
Well,
Sally, I'm talking to you. If
awesome.
you're listening, she'll know who she is. Anyway, I appreciate the time and I'm so happy to have you out. I have you as a dressage naturally instructor and out. I hope people take advantage of asking you to go travel to them and teach because you're just a wonderful teacher and I'm happy to have you as part of the team.
I am honored to be part of the team. It's a pretty incredible team.
All right. Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks, Karen.